Okay, so here we are with the camera. I hope this thing's quality comes out good. I've been using a phone for a while. Fortunately, the tripod does not fit this thing. So, my attempts to up my game when it comes to making these videos is going to be, well, we'll just say the jury's going to be out on that one. Let's know how well it works out. But, finally going to get a chance to get in here and get these potatoes. I've been holding off on digging up potatoes because I wanted to be able to do this. And so now I'm ready, except for I forgot my fork, so I'll be right back. Back with tools of the trade. So, here's the fork. Just have to be careful not to spear stuff with it. It's a little warped as far as the blades not being right, but I'm trying to keep gardening on the cheap, so I think I paid $5 for this potato fork at a thrift store. And when it's all said and done, I got one of my favorite tools, the stirrup hoe, to clean out any kind of weeds. Other than that, I'm going to just try and pull them up by hand for the most part and see if I get anything or how much I get. Here's the big first reveal. Oh, look at these beauties. Where's my box? Alright. Alright. Look at that. Let's see. They're not super huge, but they're red potatoes. They don't tend to get to be that big anyways. But I don't care because I'll probably end up in a crock pot. At least some of them will. Oh, that one's good size right there. When I'm guilty of harvesting some a little early, I couldn't help it. I would come in here and I'd dig a few up. From time to time, I've eaten a few out of this bed already. But I put 2 pounds of seed potatoes in here, so I'm curious to see what we'll get out of it. Now, potatoes are probably everybody's favorite, all-time favorite, SHTF crop of all time. For obvious reasons, but hey, let's go over them anyway. For one, they're easy to grow. You also watched my video I uploaded, I think it was yesterday, with where I wasn't here for 2 weeks, and you've seen the damage that not babysitting the garden did when it came to the squash and cucumber family plants in general. Wiped out by powdery mildew and all kinds of stuff. This, on the other hand, never had any problems. As long as you water them every now and again, they get adequate rain, they're just going to do their own thing. I think I dusted these a couple of times just because I don't like... well, this is what I got off that one plant, by the way. It's a pretty good amount for a plant. I dusted them a couple of times because I saw they would get those flea beetles on them. And other than that, watering them every now and again. Maybe throw a little fertilizer in there. That's about all I ever did with these. They just basically grew themselves. Obviously, potatoes are a staple crop, a common staple crop for the gardening. You don't really have space to grow in a home garden. Generally speaking, you don't have space to grow wheat and corn to a large extent, and other calorie crops, if you will. Gross. Throw that out of there. So potatoes becomes your calorie crop because you can grow this. And as far as stealth factors goes, if you weren't a gardener, would you recognize this? I mean, it's in a raised bed, so that would probably give you a clue it's something. But if you saw this kind of randomly in a field somewhere instead of being in a raised bed, a lot of people would not recognize this as potatoes. Since the crops they grow are underground, they make a nice stealth vegetable. And of course, everybody's heard of potato famine and all that whenever they didn't have potatoes, because you can live off these if you had to. If you had nothing else, you could live off this. You probably want some herbs or something to improve the flavor, because potatoes are kind of bland, but by themselves, I'll even take that little one. But these can keep you alive. This is a true SHTF crop. Easy to grow. Grows most places in the United States and Canada and other parts of the world. And has a lot of calories. It kind of lacks nutrition. You might want to have some kale or something else to go with it. But probably the number one SHTF crop for all those reasons and probably a lot more. Look at that. Look at that beauty. Look at those. But yeah, been waiting, anticipating. Oh, it's kind of a dud, but again, pulling it out the ground. I don't even know what that is. Get back some of the straw. Alright. So yeah, if you were growing for survival, I hate those videos that say, my top 3, or my top 5, or my number 1 pick. I hate that. That's one reason why I started this channel. So get away from that kind of thinking. There's all kinds of crops, especially depending on your location, what other sources you're able to get, because chances are you're not going to be growing your own food 100% entirely. You're going to still need resources from other places. You have to have a lot more space in the backyard, be 100% self-sufficient, but whatever you can add to the stash. Oh, look at these beauties. That's a nice one right there. But I'm distracting myself by looking at how nice some of these potatoes came out. That's a big one right there. But if you had to survive off there, then people are like, oh, my 3 biggest crops I would grow. Get away from the mentality, but if you had to pick, like in a garden my size, if I had to actually survive off of it, even though it's a pretty big garden, it's not going to produce enough food for one person for year-round survival. Maybe not in this climate, because maybe in a warmer climate where I could grow basically year-round. So if I had to pick just a handful of plants to plant, I'd want to, or if I had to survive off, I didn't have to pick it, we'd be forced to pick it, because the more variety you have, the more space it's going to require. If you only had 5 or 6 plants that you were planting, you could plant a lot more of them, as opposed to having 20 different varieties taking up the same amount of space. 20 different, let's say varieties, 20 different types of plants taking up the same amount of space. You would have maybe have that long 10-foot bed full of potatoes, maybe another one of these beds full of potatoes, different kinds, like this red one, because they're faster maturing than some other ones, and maybe a slower maturing, so that I got more harvest per year. Alright, but in this case, I have some random ones thrown in there, and I have this bed, and I'm going to replant this bed. So I can go ahead and pause this until I get this dug up, and then I'll come back and see how many we got in this box. Okay, so this is pretty impressive haul. Oh, let's break my box. Potatoes from this bed. All from this bed here. So I'm not sure how much that weighs. It was pretty heavy. Alright, that's from this space right here. It's a 4 foot by 4. Well, these aren't exact measurements, because I made this out of scrap, so it's maybe 4.5 by 4.5 or something like that. But back row is tomatoes, so there's about a foot or so I didn't use. So it's more like 3 by 4.5, 3.5 by 4.5 space that I grew all that in. Right there. I was digging around getting stuff with my hands. I haven't even used the fork. This is potatoes pulled up. Now, as far as when do you know you want to harvest, I actually harvested these a little early. Usually when they're dying back, they'll turn yellow and they'll start to wilt and look like they're dead or dying, and that's when you know it's time to harvest. Potatoes go through different phases, and the phase we're interested in is the bulbing phase, where they're bulbing up potatoes to eat. And you know, when they enter that phase, whenever they flower, because yes, potatoes do flower, they can actually produce seeds that you can grow potatoes from, although it's not, that's what they call true potato seeds. I'd hoped to get some this year for experimental SHTF gardening. I thought I'd make some interesting videos to see what kind of weird oddball potatoes you got from those, because those don't give you a consistent potato. There could be a cross with something else or who knows what. So that's not how it's done generally. Generally you use potatoes to grow potatoes. You can use true potato seeds, but there's no telling what kind of potato you'd get out of it. So, but unfortunately I did not get to do that because I've had a problem. One of the problems that's plagued my garden this year is wildlife coming in and eating my stuff. So I planted, if anybody watched the earlier videos, I planted tons and tons and tons of peas on this. Heck, the entire reason I made this trellis bed here was for peas. Well, something kept coming in and eating the peas down a few inches from the ground, so I didn't even get a whole lot of peas. I have some, like that one, I let just dry up for seed. I'll have to go through here when I clean this bed up and pick them out for maybe a fall crop if I have enough, which is unfortunate because I really was looking forward to those. So something ate the leaves or the flowers off of these because they were flowering nicely, and I was going to get some true potato seeds, or try to anyways. They don't flower every year. It's kind of a pain. But the wet conditions have to be just right for them to actually flower and seed. Now I've dug through here with my hands. I was going to work the soil a little bit with this fork, see if I find any more. Yeah, stick the fork in there, kind of break the soil back, see if I missed any. Kind of loosen it up a little bit because I want to plant another round of potatoes in here. Oh, looks like I did miss one, which is the whole purpose of doing this. Try to go far enough back with the fork so I don't spear it if possible. Go back by this and shove that in there and lift up on it, the whole area, and see if there's any potatoes in there, because I'm pretty chronically bad about missing them. That's why I got so many volunteer potatoes coming up all over the place in my garden of past years of growing potatoes and not getting them all out of the ground. Oh, I just speared one. So that one will no longer store. So this is one that will have to be eaten. What a shame. They're a good storing crop. I'm just going to dust those off and probably put them in a paper bag and stick them in the house in a cool spot by the air conditioner or something, since I don't have a root cellar, and my basement is, I wouldn't want to put any food down there and eat it. It came out of that nasty area. It's always damp, so I don't want that. So yeah, I'm finding ones. Had I not gone through with the fork, if they bury deep enough, they'll survive the cold winter and pop up with growing me potatoes in the spring, which is not necessarily a bad thing. In this case, I want to get, it means I can, because I want to plant another round in here, and I may decide to put these in a different bed next year anyways. So I'm not trying to leave ones behind if I can help it. But just kind of fork my way through, try to see if I spot any more potatoes, or at least break the soil up some, so get more prepped for the Yukon Golds. They take longer to mature than these Pontiac Reds. What is that trash doing in there? So hopefully they'll have time to mature before winter sets in. I'm worried we're going to have an early cold winter because it's craziness. I talked about my video last night, for those of you who watched it, about how it's been unusually cold here, getting down in the 60s. I was like, yeah, it's not too bad. It's like 70 degrees and whatever in the evening. I checked the weather after I made the video. Our low last night was in the high 50s. This is July. So for all the areas that's burning up, there's other parts of the country, like where I'm at, it's unseasonably cold. Of course, the weather's not going to talk about that, or the news is not going to talk about that. It doesn't fit the global warming narrative. So it's going to be 1984 out of existence. But for those of you who are growing in climates that are cooler or warmer than normal, something to pay attention to. Watch your own backyard as opposed to what they're trying to tell you. Anyways, I'm going to fork this up, look for any missing potatoes, slap some Yukon Golds in there and cover them up, and I'm going to water them in. So let me go ahead and get Alright, so I finished porking, and that's the potatoes I got out of this bed. And now I'm going to drop in these Yukon Golds. Some of my seed potatoes went bad. I don't have a whole lot of seed potatoes for that, but I'm going to go ahead and just fill these in 4 to 6 inches deep. And that's going to be it for these. I'll cover them back with some mulch again, and I'm going to make it another row, and that's it. Maybe we'll go back and see how much these weigh. Okay, my scale is too small to fit my box of potatoes on. So, anyways, let's talk about storage for these. I have to let them dry out and then transfer them to some other container. Some of them aren't looking bad, like this right here. It's got some damage. Maybe cut that out, or there's a couple of them that's been speared. And notice I did not wash these off. I just kind of brushed them a little bit with my hands. But fresh picked potatoes are very sensitive. You can damage the skins very easy, and if you do, it will decrease the shelf life in storage. So the idea would be to let these dry so the soil is just dust on it. Brush it off gently. Don't wash it underwater. Don't scratch it with your fingernails. Try to baby them as much as possible until they've had some time to grow. You know, they'll sit there on the counter for a little while, and the skins will thicken up. It's like if you cut a potato and you sit on the countertop, it grows that skin over you cut it. It's the same thing. These will skin up a little bit, and they will get a little tougher, and they'll store better. In the meantime, just kind of have to let them do their thing. And so that, as you can see where I scratched one already with a nail or with something else. So I need to clip my fingernails pretty bad. So just got to be gentle with them, let them dry out, keep them in a cool place. A crisper refrigerator, which I find works really well. If you can put them in there once they've skinned up a little bit, or if you have a root cellar or a basement that's accommodating, there's various ways. But the idea is you don't want them waterlogged, you don't want them to dry up, they need some humidity, and you want them to stay in a cool area, and you don't want to damage the skin any if you can help it. And they should last for months. Don't really have to get up a storage facility here for them, but this amount will probably be eaten up. My scale only goes up to about, I think it's 5 kilograms, so 11, 12 pounds. I don't think this box probably weighs more than that, so I'll be maxing it out. But for one little bed, SHTF gardening, I'm very satisfied with this harvest. This is better than I expected, honestly. I've grown some other varieties before. Usually I will just take some potatoes from the store that's eyed too much, and yes, you can do that. You don't have to buy seed potatoes. You don't have to do anything special. You can plant those. They don't have to be organic. Just throw them in the ground once they start eyeing up, and they will grow. My volunteers, they're all over the garden. If you've seen past gardening videos, that's what they are. Those are hit and miss. Sometimes you'll get potatoes that will produce really well like that. Sometimes you get potatoes that won't produce very well. I'm very happy with these ones I planted from seed potatoes, and so we'll see how the Yukon Golds do, but I'm very happy with that. But anyways, that's it for harvesting these potatoes. Next step is to let them sit there and dry out and get a skin that forms around them. And after that, you can do whatever with them. Store them in a cool place, cook them, eat them. These taste much better than store-bought because they're going to be fresh and have flavor, unlike the flavorless stuff from the store. Alright, well, this is SHTF Garden out. Go ahead and drop the like, share, subscribe. All that good stuff. You know what to do. Help me grow this channel like we grow some SHTF crops. Alright, have a good day. Thanks.